So,
I'm
welcome.
on the meeting. It's Glenn Vettermeyer.
Oh, okay. There you go. Thank you.
I'm here.
Hi, Glenn. Okay, great.
Hi, Gareth.
So, welcome to the March 16th, 2022 meeting of the Wassenaar Planning Board. And we'll start with some introductions in the order you're on my screen. Candy.
Andy Anelli, Secretary.
Jim.
Jim Bacinas, Planning Board member.
Valerie.
I'm an Astra Planning Board planning consultant.
Donna.
Donna Sharrett, Planning Board member.
Christy.
Christy Adana, Planning Board Secretary.
Let me hold on.
Dan.
Hold on.
I'm sorry, Planning Board Secretary.
Consulting engineer of the planning board.
Mark.
I can turn my
Mark.
screen off, and then we can.
Hang on a second. Mark Bacucci, thank you. Okay. Dan, could you say yours again? I don't think we all heard you.
Sure. Dan Ciarcia, consulting engineer of the planning board.
Great. And Carolyn, did she come back? Not yet. So Carolyn will join us when her computer is working. My name is Gareth Huffam, chairman of the planning board. Welcome. So let's get started. First item on the agenda is the River Knoll development at 40 Croton Dam Road. And this is a completeness review of the draft supplemental environmental impact statement, which has been submitted. Glenn, do you want to say anything to start us off?
No, I think, Mr. Chairman, I think tonight is just procedural. Just you're acknowledging the fact that March 16th, you're accepting the second draft for review for completeness.
Right.
So there's no presentation tonight, nor are we here to have any substantive discussion on the matter.
Okay, that's wonderful. Comment.
Okay, now I'm just letting you know the.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't even, I can't even see.
Sandy, could you
Better keep your voice down, Jen.
be off? Thanks. Okay, so as you heard, Glenn, tonight and the public tonight is just procedural, where we're acknowledging receipt of the supplemental DIS after it had been reviewed, and we asked for some changes. The changes are now in, and so we again have to review it to see if all the changes have been made.
Right here.
No, I hear you. I hear you. Yes, that's what we reached out. Bob Peak from JMC and spoke with
I left that house.
Valerie. So yes, that's what we understood. We did spend an awful lot of time on this, so we're keeping our fingers crossed that we've completed everything.
Right. Okay. So, do we have any comments from our consultants? Valerie started us up. Anything else?
No, we'll be undertaking the review, and we anticipate having our completeness review by next month. So the way I think Christy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have 30 days in which to undertake the completeness review. So your next meeting is April 6th and then April 20th. So I would anticipate us having the completeness review ready for discussion at the April 6th meeting.
The issues are a little bit narrower because the scope of the review this time around will be limited to those items that were identified during the first review. So it's not an entire comprehensive review again.
Review of the changes. Okay.
Yeah, and Gareth, the other thing I'd like to do at that point in time is we did do an extensive computer model, and I would like to walk you through, you and the planning board and whoever's watching. I think it's very impressive and it'll be very helpful for the neighbors to see the project in the context of Grandview and Pershing and First and Second Avenues, Narragansett as well.
Now you're good.
Okay, so that's good to hear, Glenn, because I was going to bring up that I didn't see that model in your submission. Do you have that available, on a website or a link to any files?
We do have parts of it on our website. Yes, on our project website. We'd rather kind of just walk you through it at the planning board meeting. I think that way we can get feedback from you all as well.
Okay, my only thinking is that part of our review, it'd be good to see it
I did.
for that time.
No, it says mute.
What do you think, Valerie? Is there a way we could do that? Maybe just like if I could take a quick look at it, or is that not proper?
No, I think it's fine if you want to, it's documents that are going to be part of the seeker review. So if the board wants to see them prior to the meeting, I think that's fine if they're able to arrange it. And I also think it's fine if the applicant wants to present it at the next planning board meeting as well.
Okay, great. So, Glenn, if you and I could arrange a time where where you could show me, just in case, it's probably completely fine and ready to go. But in case there is something, that I would consider it, incomplete that would give you a chance to, fix it before the next meeting. I'm just trying to save time. I know.
Sure, that would be very helpful. Happy to do that, Gareth.
Okay, great. Any other?
Should I'll coordinate it through Sandy?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Any other comments from the consultants? Any comments from the board? Okay, so with that, we thank you for the submission, and we look forward to hearing from you about seeing that model, and we look forward to after that seeing you at the next meeting.
Very good. Thank you, Gareth.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Night.
So the next item on the agenda is the Pacucci subdivision. Who will be representing Pacucci tonight? Is Mr. Mastronacci?
Yes.
On there. Hi, Ralph.
It took me 3 seconds to unmute.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. I'd like to share my screen, if I can.
Yeah, go ahead. Sandy, is he authorized? Can you make it so he can share his screen? Great. Thank you.
Is that working?
We see something. It's half blocked out.
It might take a second to catch.
No problem. Take your time.
You don't see anything?
We only see parts of a computer screen.
Okay. I don't know if that's me, but I'm going to stop and start again.
That looks better.
Is that visible?
No.
It's Ralph, I think you actually had this problem
Yeah.
in another municipality recently that I was attending the meeting.
Oh.
So I think if you open the file before you share your screen,
Alrighty.
And then you can select which screen you want us to see. That may do the trick. There you go.
Oh, thank God.
Great.
Okay. This was the plan that we submitted about a month ago for your board, and you had asked questions about screening, and we went out in the field and we made some determinations about what the existing natural screening was around this proposed house. The second thing that changed was that Mr. Picucci worked out a house plan that he would like to build, and of course, this is at some point part of your duties to look at the architectural features, so on. This plan really hasn't changed very much since we made the initial submittal. However, one thing that you did ask for at the last meeting was to have us go in front of the John Hamilton building inspector and have his opinion. We did get his opinion. I responded to his opinion, and today he responded back essentially saying that our solution, which now I'm going to have to share a different screen at this point. I hope I can. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see a different screen now?
Yeah, we see it.
Okay. So essentially it had to do with what's called Section 503. It's a fire code. And in that, if you have more, according to John, his interpretation, that if you have more than two houses, the portion of the road that is up to those two houses needs to be 20 feet wide. Our private road is currently 14 feet wide, except at the very beginning where it is 20 feet wide. So we are showing, I'll zoom in. We're showing a widening of that private road to 20 feet. The widening would be accomplished using grasscrete. Grasscrete is a concrete paver and is strong enough to hold up a fire truck, whatever. But the advantage is it doesn't actually appear to be part of the road. It's grass grows up through it. So the road would appear a country sort of road. We think this is a good solution. If it's not acceptable, then we would pave it. But I think this is a better solution than just bringing in some asphalt here. In the same plan, we are treating stormwater. We have a sort of half detention, half rain garden feature down at the bottom. And essentially, I think you've seen this several times now. I'm not sure that there's anything that I could say that would be much different from what you've already seen.
Thank you. So just briefly, I did see the chain of communications between you and John Hamilton. The last one I saw was where you were proposing this, but I did not see a response by him yet. You're saying that he did respond to it?
By email this morning, yes.
Okay. Roughly speaking, what did he say? I'm just curious, although we'll have to hear from him.
But roughly speaking, he said it's fine.
Okay, that's good to hear.
If I can, I'll try to get the...
Mr. Chairman, I can read it it's not long, it's a couple of sentences if you'd like me to read it.
That'd be great, thank you.
This was from Building Inspector John Hamilton earlier today. The preliminary review looks good. I assume the roadway will be able to handle the weights as prescribed in the code, and I believe that's what Mr. Mastromonaco just attested to. I don't have it in front of me, so I can't check if a turnaround, hammerhead, or other requirement is needed, but I think we can get an okay on the width. So there may be some additional conversations that should be had with respect if there's any additional requirements regarding maneuverability of the vehicles, but Mr. Hamilton does seem to be satisfied with the proposed width being presented by the applicant.
Okay,
Thank you.
Sounds good. So we will review this over the next week. Are there any comments at this time from the consultants? I know you haven't had a chance to review it yet. Steve?
No, I don't have any comments at this time. I think the one thing is we'll want the applicant to continue their conversations with John, because ultimately we want John to sign off on the final plan associated with the road.
Yep.
No problem.
Any comments from the board? Not at this time. Okay, so I think with that, we thank you for your submission, and we will, consultants will be reviewing it over the next few weeks, and we, I imagine we'll be ready for the April 6th meeting. If you're able to, I think we should be able to conclude this as long as John is completely satisfied with those remaining questions.
Has a public hearing been noticed on this yet?
I don't.
Ralph?
No.
So
No.
perhaps this may be the time, if the board wanted to call for a public hearing to be held at your April 6th meeting, because that will be a requirement, could take any action on this application.
Okay, I think that that's a great idea. Do I hear a motion from the board to open a public hearing, to notice a public hearing for next meeting?
So move.
Second.
Oops.
Second, great.
Give it to
And
Jim.
Jim, you vote? Jim, how do you vote on that?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Yeah, we had yeses on all of them, right? Good. So thank you very much, Ralph, and we'll see you at the public hearing on the 6th of April.
Okay, thank you. Good evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye. So next item on the agenda is the Welcome Homes, 68 Somerstown Road. This is ARB for a new single-family home. Are the grants or their representative online?
Hi, this is Jody Cross from Zarin and Steinmetz
Hey,
on
Ralph.
behalf of Welcome Homes. I also have with me
Are we
Andrew
off?
Beccarello.
I'm sorry, Mr.
I still
Pacucci,
have
I'm sorry to interrupt. Mr. Pacucci, can you mute yourself, please?
Here on the computer, I could not, I've been trying.
You know what?
Andy, if you could just, okay, very good. Thanks.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay, please continue. Yep.
Sure. So just to repeat, we have Andrew Vaccarello, the civil engineer. We also have Anthony Carino, who is the VP of Design, and Kate Ryan, who's the Senior Director of Architecture for Welcome Homes. And we're here seeking ARB approval to construct a single-family residence on a vacant property known as 68 Somerstown Road. And I'll just share my screen so you can see. Here's the site plan, just to orient the board. So by way of background, Welcome Homes is a builder of high-end single-family homes, and they're what's called a turnkey provider. They work with the clients to simplify the whole process of purchasing property, obtaining any necessary approvals, which is why we're here, and constructing the homes. So we're here tonight on behalf of the contract vendee, and we have with the consent of the owner of properties. Now, as you'll see, the property consists of 2 tax lots, which are lots 3.1 and 3.2. They were created pursuant to a subdivision that was, the plat was filed in 2018. We provided a copy of that subdivision plat for your information with our submission. And the home would be located over here on lot 3.2. It's about 1.3 acres. As you can see, much of the lot is constrained by a conservation easement as well as wetlands and the wetland buffer. And we're not proposing any encroachments into any buffer or into the conservation easement, of course. We're not proposing any improvements on 3.1 except for the stormwater basin right here. The house has been designed to comply with the approved building envelope as well as all the bulk requirements of the R40 zoning district. And you'll see it's a pretty tight building envelope over here. Let's see if I could just move this over. Can you see that? The house?
Yep.
Yes? Okay, great. So Welcome Homes has 3 different house models to choose from. This is not like a cheap modular home. These are meticulously designed stick-built homes. Welcome Homes provides the homeowner with some limited aesthetic leeway, but in short, they can't make any architectural or structural changes to the home. Just some limited aesthetic options the customers can choose from. So this is Welcome Homes Oasis 5 model. We prepared and submitted plans and renderings and material callouts, and this is from the material callouts. The home is about 4,543 square feet, 4 bedroom, 3.5 baths. We also provided in our submission the required photographs of properties within 350 feet. As you'll see, the surrounding homes are varied in size and style. And as again, I noted, this home will be a very high quality construction, and it's neither monotonously similar to nor strikingly dissimilar from the surrounding homes. We also did receive the Nelson Copen Voorhees memo, noting certain information that's still required. In light of the tight building envelope and the conservation easement and the wetlands, we weren't proposing any landscaping, but of course we're here open to any suggestions by the board if they want to see, if any of you want to see certain screening or landscaping, we're open to hearing all of that, of course. Same with the lighting. There's minimal lighting provided, just I believe, and the rest of the team will correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it's 3 typical residential lighting fixtures near the garage and the front door. But we can show that more information on the plans if the board needs to see that. Also, as you saw on the site plan, we're pretty far back from the road. We weren't proposing any screening. If there's concerns about that, again, we're happy to listen to any concerns the board has. And regarding tree removal, we noted that the MPV memo does state we have to show the existing and proposed trees to be removed. There are a few trees that will be removed along the driveway that was contemplated in the subdivision approvals. The driveway is in the same location that was approved in the subdivision. The house is in the same building envelope, though slightly reconfigured to accommodate the style of the house. So any of the materials that you need additional information, of course, we're happy to provide that to the board in advance of the next meeting. We would ask respectfully that the board set a public hearing so that we could get going on this house. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I'm going to kick this over first to Andrew Vaccarello to briefly discuss the site plan and layout. And then we'll kick it over to Kate Ryan to just discuss some of the architectural details and design. And Anthony Carino's here if there's any questions regarding the materials that are going to be utilized for the structure.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Vaccarello. I'm a civil engineer with Welcome Homes. Like Jody said, I'm going to be presenting on the site-related features for the application at 68 Somerstown Road. So the project consists of 2 parcels that were created by a previous subdivision that was approved by the board. The cumulative area of both lots is 3.22 acres, and the property is currently contains a pond and some vacant lawn area that's unimproved. And there is a recorded conservation easement that exists over the existing pond on the site. You also may note the property is located within the R40 zone for single-family residential uses. The application is fully compliant with the zoning bulk requirements for that zone. The site features that are proposed as part of the application includes the 2-story single-family home, a partially paved driveway, and all associated utilities. The proposed site features are very consistent with the layout that was depicted in that previous subdivision. Additionally, the application is also managing all stormwater that's generated by the development. We are proposing a stormwater basin that's located on the second lot, and that basin is situated to avoid any encroachment into the environmental buffer that's present on the property. And it's going to be directing runoff towards after that basin into the on-site pond. The proposed home will be served by municipal connections for both water and sewer, and that was consistent with the prior subdivision plan. Additionally, the development is proposed to maintain as much of the natural vegetation as possible. The existing vegetation along the south side between the subject property and the neighboring properties is going to remain, and it's going to continue to provide screening from those adjacent lots to where this subject property is located. The application will also plan to prepare a landscaping plan, and we can submit that to the board in advance of the public hearing. And we'd be glad to take any feedback that you may have on landscaping that you'd like to see incorporated, but we will plan to propose and provide you a landscaping plan. And the application is also proposing a few external light fixtures that are attached to the home, but there's no freestanding light fixtures that are proposed with the development. So we are not anticipating any adverse effects on neighboring properties in terms of light spillage. With that, I think that kind of summarizes the extent of the improvements for the application. I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have. And if not, I can pass it back over to Jody.
Thank you, Andrew. Now, if I could have Kate, if you want to share your screen and discuss some of the architectural features of the house.
Sure. Thanks everyone for your time. Jody, I think, covered quite a bit of what might be relevant with regards to the architecture, but as she said, this isn't dissimilar to other homes in the community. We're about 4,500 square feet. The total roof height you can see here is 28.11. The floor to floor height on the first and second floor is 10 foot and then 9 foot. And the windows that we're showing here are casement windows, and they are 6 foot by 2 foot. We have an 8 foot front door, and then I think you can see here there's a light here. There'll also be lights that are in the overhang above the front entry. And in terms of the materiality, as Jody mentioned, I think Anthony can speak to that, but if you have any architectural questions, please feel free to throw them my way. All right.
Okay. Thank you, Kate. So I guess at this time, I'd like to know if, does the board have any questions for me, for Andrew, for Kate?
Okay.
And we're done with our presentation.
Great, I think we do. Let's start with the consultants. Valerie?
Yeah, so just I think Jody touched upon my comments specifically dealing with the landscaping and the lighting for this board's review. But the other thing that I just wanted to bring up, and Christy, I think you can probably weigh a little bit on this, is that the stormwater is being proposed for on the neighboring property. And I understand the concept of it is that because of the site constraints. But in terms of future development of that particular property, we're going to have to work out how to deal with that, the stormwater scenario, where if this board approves it on another property, how that will reflect later on down the line in terms of potential development of that property.
Yeah, the stormwater is proposed to be in about the location of where there was contemplated to be a house on the subdivision plat. So I'm not really sure. And then, if you move further back, you're up against the pond and the conservation easement. So I'm not even really sure what the development capability potential would be with this proposed plan, but I think there would need some sort of, we could try to talk about this, but there would need to be some sort of recorded acknowledgement that these properties are going to be in common ownership, or that the other lot isn't intended to be developed, something to keep this together, because this is not what was originally contemplated in the subdivision. It's not necessarily problematic if that's the intention, to not develop that property and just use it. It's a little bit beyond the scope of ARB review, but it's going to come up at the building permit level anyway. So you might as well be prepared to try to work through those issues sooner rather than later.
Sure, and I'd be glad to just address the comment briefly. I understood, and the intent is for both properties to be under common ownership. The applicant doesn't have plans to develop that second parcel with a home at this point. If that ever was the case, they would, of course, submit updated engineering plans to come up with an alternate strategy to manage the stormwater. But the intent was to locate the pond in that area to avoid all buffers to make it as compliant as possible right now. But if that strategy ever changed with having a second house there, they would come up with an alternate solution.
I think we have to go a step beyond that, because we should have some type of easement or restrictive covenant filed against it, so that if this property ever shows up on the market somehow, that a title search would reveal that there was this restriction that would have to be dealt with any owner, future owner of the property, should they try to peel it off from this application. So I would recommend that something of that nature that be recorded with the county clerk, that which would come up during a title search, I think would be a necessary element to this.
Well, we can certainly strategize on it and then come back to you with at the next meeting date with I think a more concrete solution for how we would handle the legality of that. And I will certainly note the comment at this point.
I'm not sure I have much to add to that, except to say, yes, we could come up with certainly a way to ensure that any prospective purchaser in the future is aware of this. But as Andrew mentioned, there is no intention at this time to develop that property, which is why we're putting the stormwater basin there. And the contract vendee is purchasing both properties.
Christy, do you have any thoughts on these proposed arrangements?
I mean, I agree with Dan. I think it needs to be something recorded, not only for notice purposes for any potential, successor in interest, but also to make sure that it's beyond challenge, right? We've seen situations where a condition is put on an approval, and then 5-10 years down the line, someone comes back and tries to get that condition removed. And we don't want to be in a position of having to defend what's happened many years earlier. We need that to be part of the record of the property, and that's on file with the county clerk, because I don't think a condition of the approval would be sufficient. But it's certainly not something that needs to be decided tonight. And like I said, whether it's within the purview of the ARB, but that's what the plan is showing. So it's something that will have to be addressed.
Okay. Do you think it bears bringing it to the planning board as a site plan review? Basically reviewing the the subdivision.
And that's something that the applicant should think about. Whether if there's a way to handle this without reopening the subdivision approval. Because I'm not sure that's the direction they may necessarily want to go in, but it is certainly a potential option in terms of either, merging those two lots back together. But that would be a very lengthy process. And I think there are ways to handle it that wouldn't necessarily involve that. But if they're not amenable to going one of those other routes, then that may be the path we have to take.
Right. And I think just to piggyback on what Christy's mentioning, I think, I know it's not ARB, but if this applicant were to submit tomorrow to John Hamilton, that would be a thing that would get caught really quickly, that how can he go ahead and give a building permit for the stormwater that's required in another, and it's being placed on another property. So it makes sense to try to deal with it now before we move forward.
And if I could respond to that, we don't disagree. We're not at this time looking to reopen the subdivision process and to merge these lots. So we will put our heads together in advance of our next submission and propose a solution to this that that addresses the issues raised by the consultants and the board.
Okay, that sounds good. Are there any comments from the board?
So I have a couple concerns. One is I remember this when I wasn't on the board. It was a whole different board, I believe, at when this came through. Maybe Jim was on it, I don't know. But this was pretty problematic because it was the previous owner prior to the subdivision had filled in the pond. So basically, and culverted the stream. So the whole property is hydric soils. So I would definitely be concerned if there was a stormwater system there and the idea that they were going to build something on that. I don't know how you can even do that. My other concern is, and I know this is an architectural review board in front of us right now, is that, but I don't see the wetland buffer for that pond on Devana Road. I mean, that should also be considered. I believe almost the whole property is in a wetland buffer. So just to have all the information there. But you can see when you have the little inset on your site plan there, you can see what the pond used to look like before it was filled in, and it really took up much of the property. It was filled in without permits, so no one really knows exactly when it was done. Just that there was a pond and a stream, and then there wasn't. You can see it on the GIS when you go back on that. So there is some issues there. So it is something to be concerned with. I think having one house there is definitely better. But I would be concerned if there was ever, really concerned if there was ever a possibility of trying to squeeze a house in on that other property. So that's my comments.
Jim?
I agree with all the comments that we've been talking about for the last couple of minutes. I'd also like to see what we're proposing for screening between the Tavano Road properties and this property. So there's enough, homework to be done that I'm gonna just hold off.
Carolyn, any thoughts on this?
I didn't realize that. I basically agree with Jim and Donna at this point. That we should take a look at some screening, as Jim mentioned, and we definitely should find a way to limit further development of this piece of property at this point. If they're going to be putting the stormwater onto the other plot.
So I want to say that Donna brought up a very good point about the pond that's over on the south side near Tavana Road. It looks to the eye like the placement of this proposed house is okay with respect to the 100-foot buffer from that pond, but please do show the 100-foot from what's shown, at least, of the edge of that pond. Okay.
Noted. We will do that.
Okay. Also, I have just a general question, or a question about lines. So I noticed that there seem to be two separate dashed lines for representing the edge of the main pond on the property. The edge of the wetland, I guess. Can you comment on that? Was it two different wetland delineations, or what am I looking at there? Why two lines?
So there was a delineation that was performed last month, and that delineation confirmed the limits of the wetland, and that line is shown on the plan, which is very close to the edge of the water line. That line, which was delineated recently, was offset by 100 feet, and that is the buffer that's shown. That that extends into the property.
Okay, so
I'm not sure why I follow up about the second part to your question about the second line.
right. So I wish I could point to it.
Hold on, I'm going to share my screen if that's okay.
Okay, great. Go ahead. I don't know if I can.
Is this what you're talking about here? Those double lines here?
Yes, exactly.
Ah,
And those double lines follow all the way around. And it appears that the 100-foot buffer arrow, double arrow, is referencing the one of the lines, but not the other. It seems to be referencing the inner line for the most part.
Sure, I can address the question. So the inner line is the limit of the actual delineation for the wetland. That shows where the soil scientist had determined that wetland limit lies. The outer line that's close to that is the limit of where the conservation easement exists. So the easement does extend beyond the limit of the wetland, but we were using the actual wetland limit as the buffer to calculate the buffer. So that line was offset 100 feet to establish that buffer.
Okay, that seems proper. Thank you. Thank you for that.
so perhaps we just need a label on the plan that shows limit of conservation easement, limit of wetlands to show what those dotted lines are.
That would
Sure,
be
we can do
great
that.
in case one of the neighbors end up going to the building department to take a look at the plans.
Sure.
I
We
don't know
could
if
do
the
that,
board
right,
would
Andrew?
find it informative, but maybe you want to see, I mean, this isn't a subdivision that was approved, I think it was wrapped up probably like 4 years ago. So this isn't one that's ancient history. Perhaps it would help inform the board if we ask the applicant to show what the limit of disturbance was on the Grant subdivision, which is the application that created these two lots. And then you can see how that compares to the activities that this applicant's proposing.
Sure, we can put together an exhibit to show the limit of disturbance for that prior subdivision.
Great. One thing I wanted to mention about the Tavano neighborhood, I believe that they have that neighborhood has in the past contemplated seeking historic recognition for.
Received it.
Say it again.
They received it.
Oh, they received it. Oh,
I do believe so.
okay. So you may have, and I don't really know the legalities of that. But you may have an additional burden architecturally to bring it into compliance with that aesthetic historic district, but I don't know. But that certainly should be addressed.
Mr. Chairman, who would we speak with about that? Sorry, Anthony Carino from Welcome Homes. I haven't spoken yet at this meeting. Just curious who we could speak with about that in order to find out what would be required there.
So, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Christy. It looks like you were going to say something.
I was gonna say I think it depends upon what agency designated it. If it was done at the state level, it would be SHPO, right? The State Historic Preservation Office.
Right.
So I do recall a few years ago before the town board, there was some discussion about applying for designation. I don't recall ever having seen that was officially done, and I don't believe that the town was affirmatively involved or advocated for it. But that's not to say it didn't happen. So, I mean, I can do a little bit of research on my end to see. Donna, if you have any information about that.
Right, I can look on the Chris. I can look on the
Right.
Chris website, which will provide that. I know when we went through the comprehensive plan process, I don't recall this coming up. So I can take a look at the state and federal registry.
Just to clarify, we're talking about the neighboring neighborhood, not the neighborhood in which this lot is located? Or are we saying that this lot itself is now within the historic district?
We don't know the answer to that question.
And I believe it's just Tavano Road, so I don't think it's this where this property is.
but it's
Okay.
But I'm not an expert on this, so I definitely invite more investigation.
right. But
We'll
this
certainly follow up.
is immediately adjacent to a Tavano Road series of properties. So that's why I brought it up.
I like this house.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And just for, I guess, for my own clarity, because we haven't worked in your municipality before, being adjacent to something that's been approved is not the same as being in a district that's been approved for historic. So we would be okay architecturally, assuming that we're not within those bounds.
That's correct. But even if you are, there's no local regulations on the books for any historic district, district guidelines. So this would be, if anything, if it is in the historic district, it would be consultation with SHPO.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
I think it really only comes into effect if you're looking for grant funding or something like that.
No
If it's state
here.
designated.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further comments from the consultants or the board? Okay. So what are we expecting for next time then? More of, so clarification on how you're going to handle the stormwater, and what about the landscape plan and tree survey?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we will provide a landscaping plan and information regarding the lightings and as well as the trees. Right, Andrew? We're going to supply information regarding tree removal?
That's right. We'll submit a landscape plan that notes all that before the next hearing.
There is a, I'm not sure if you guys have seen it. There's provisions in the code that deal with tree removal and replacement. Otherwise, you have to pay into the tree bank fund. So just if you haven't, take a look at that.
Sure. Yeah, we'll reference that.
And let me a heads up on the tree survey. Please do make sure that the arborist identifies the trees to the scientific species name, the Latin name, and that becomes important in determining what you have to pay and what not into the fund, because some trees that are invasive are exempted from you having to pay. So it's in your interest to do that.
Okay, thank you.
And is that just for the trees that will be removed, not for all the existing trees, correct?
Generally, we want to see all the existing trees and then cross out, show which ones are going to be removed. All the existing trees above a certain size. What is it? 4 inches at chest height? Is that right, Donna?
I think it might be 6, but I
think it's 6 inches.
Oh, 6. Okay. So
I'm sorry. My question, I'm sorry, is whether we need to label the scientific species of each of them, or just the ones that are being removed, even if we show the location of trees that are species trees, or regulated trees.
I don't remember whether it specifies in our regulation, but I would like to see all the trees labeled that are above 6 inches.
Perfect. Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, thank you.
For clarification, there's a lot of land here that's not being touched that we probably don't want the applicant going near, but I think a reasonable setback around the active areas, because there may be trees they're not taking down, but you like to know whether they're within the drip line and are at risk. So I don't know if we want to give them a little more direction as to what areas to focus on, but it would appear they don't really need to be going out into the wetlands where there's going to be no activity.
Donna, how do you feel about that?
I don't think they need to do all the trees that are in the back that they're not touching. Just whatever, like the area that they're going to be working at and that perimeter area of where they're going to. I think that would be fair.
Okay.
But if it limits them, needing to plant additional vegetation for screening, it'd be great to have it on the site plan.
I'll defer to you guys. I would like to just, I'm sorry, Valerie. I was just going to say, just to let everybody know that there is the building department has a brochure of native plants that are in the area that are good recommendations. So there's a lot more that are on that list. So I would, but just like to point that out.
I think there's a link on your website too.
Yeah, and certainly there's other ones that you could choose. There's lots of native plants. It's a good list.
Jim, could you restate what you said a minute ago? I kind of missed it.
We're gonna be looking for vegetation for a little bit of screening on the to the Tavano residences, Tavano Road residences. So if there's existing vegetation on the site that kind of works double duty there, let's show it on the plan so we don't add any additional requirements that aren't necessary. I mean, we don't need to hide the house from the neighbors, but we're looking for some screening.
Yeah, Jim, we're understanding what you're saying. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
So why don't we set a radius from the house that makes sense? Would 100 feet from the center of the house radius make sense? Is that too much? Too little? What do you think?
That seems too much. I think it just, I don't know. Jim, what do you think? I mean, I don't think they're 100 foot from their property line.
Might I suggest maybe something, they probably already know their limit of disturbance. So maybe within 50 feet of the limit of disturbance. So that will capture whatever trees that they're going to have fall down. And then also you'll get a sense of what trees are planning to be remaining around that area.
Between that and Dan's comment, I think that covers it.
I mean,
And I
maybe
don't
we
think
could
there's
really-
I don't think there's a significant number of trees for the size of this property in the first instance. So we understand what you would like to see.
So
Yeah, Jim, I
would
think
just,
the area you're concerned about is really just between the driveway and the property line. Because the driveway location is pretty much fixed at this point, so it's really just whatever buffering can remain between the driveway and the property boundary that backs up to the Tavano Road backyards.
Right, the rear part of the house there has a few houses bordering Tavano Road, so they know where the homes are.
but this is a very large house that's being built, and then you have, nothing in front of it, and then this giant pond. So shouldn't there be some screening from the main road also? So, and actually it would do the pond a world of good if you had some vegetation there around it. So that would be my suggestion, is to have some.
If I can ask a question, so I mean, we're going to try and put together the landscaping plan in advance of the next meeting. Would you guys prefer to see a mixture of a screening along that southern property line, but also have some plantings in the buffer area to provide some screening from Somerstown Road?
That sounds excellent. And it'd
Okay.
be good for the pond. That is, I believe that's a connected pond. It connects to the property just below it. There's a pond back there. So, and then it eventually ends up in the Hudson River. So any kind of vegetation you can put in between the property, the house and that pond would benefit the Hudson River.
Okay, let me see what kind of plan we can put together.
Great.
Yeah, I think some of this is going to dictate itself. I mean, you're going to be removing certain vegetation and then replacing it per the code. So you're going to be looking for places to plant stuff. So I think some of this is going to resolve itself.
Okay, and just to clarify that we're going to go with the 50 feet from the area of disturbance as a minimum for where you'll show the trees. Okay.
Got it.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, any other comments from the consultants or the board?
Nope.
Okay, do you think, Valerie, that we're ready to call for a public hearing, or do you want to wait for a round?
I think you probably could call for a public hearing, because since the outstanding items are landscaping, lighting, and then we're clearly needing to deal with the stormwater stuff, but that's not necessarily associated with ARB. So I think at this point, if you're happy with the architecture and the overall appearance of the house, then I would call for the public hearing.
If I could just interject real quick while I have you guys, I think the only thing we haven't touched on in terms of the lighting is what you're looking to understand, just so I can provide it at our next appearance.
Let me start on that. So the general generally what we're most concerned with is light bleeding over to other properties. And in the past, on this very site, we went through quite a bit of negotiation about light going toward Tavano Road, across the driveway there. And we ended up putting in a lot of screening, and that's all been scrapped, I guess. But just be very aware of that. So the lights on the garage and so forth.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I could explain the lights that are on the house and maybe just get a sense from the board here what's acceptable. So these are 12-inch cans, up-down lights. The lights are recessed within the fixture, and they give a simple glow that's meant to illuminate the facade of the home only. Nothing projects out from this home whatsoever.
That's good. In addition, be aware that we require a color temperature of less than 3000 K.
Thank goodness.
Okay.
But we also want downward facing lights.
Yeah, it's an up-down fixture.
What does that mean? I don't know what that means.
One bulb faces up, one bulb faces down.
Right, so I really don't like that up facing.
Oh, I'm sorry, you prefer only down facing fixture?
Right.
Okay, is that something that's mandated or is something that's preferred?
I don't think it's mandated, but it's you're gonna be like in a pretty, I mean, I guess it depends. Perhaps you could show us what that's gonna look like, and maybe I'm just misunderstanding it.
No, that's okay. I can provide a photo of it. I can provide a photo of it with it illuminated, and if there's any objection to it, we could certainly replace it with it.
But I do know on our comprehensive plan we are addressing like the dark sky.
Sure. As a photographer, I appreciate that. Believe me, I will have an option for down only prepared for the next meeting so that we can look at both together.
Great, thank you for that.
Okay, if there are no further comments, then I would entertain a motion to call for to notice a public hearing for next meeting.
My only question, I guess, Mr. Chairman, I apologize for interrupting, would be to the applicant as to whether they would prefer that be noticed for April 6th, the first meeting, or April 20th, because it seems like they have a little bit of homework to do. And while they do have 3 weeks before the next meeting, I just want to make sure that it's enough time for them to do all of that and get it submitted sufficiently in advance so that everything can be noticed.
So if I could ask, what's the submission deadline for that meeting so that you do have it sufficiently in advance?
Sandy, do you have that, Andy?
It is the 28th of this month. To be on April 6th. For April 6th, the 28th.
So I'll defer to my my development team to see if that's a feasible date or if we want to push to the 4/20 meeting.
Sandy, what just for the record, what's the submission deadline for the April 20th meeting?
That would be April 11th.
Great.
Andrew, you have the heaviest lift here, so we're going to go ahead and defer to you on choosing the date there. Thank you to the board for the option.
Let's go for the earlier date if possible.
Okay.
Okay. So do I have a motion?
Don't move.
Second?
Second.
Great. Jim, how do you vote?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Motion carried.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing you on April 6th.
Thank you all for your input. We appreciate it. Have a great night.
Good night. So the final project on the agenda is the MGM subdivision at 5 Hawks Avenue. And I think there's Tom, and Jamola, great. Good evening.
Good evening.
So let's see, we got your changes, and it appears that most of the things we asked for have been addressed, but Valerie has prepared a document going through them. So Valerie, why don't you take it?
Oh, so I just prepared for the board, just so that they could see comparisons from the initial, like the original approvals versus the recent submissions, as well as the final submissions we just received. A lot of the final submissions were in response to comments from the board, and so we highlighted what those changes were. So this way it's a little bit easier for the board to identify if those changes were made appropriately as requested, or if there's still some additional changes to be made. And then also, in addition, I provided the board a draft resolution for your consideration.
Okay, great.
I think most of the changes were relating to landscaping and landscaping notes.
Okay. Any other comments from the consultants?
I just had, I don't know if we're talking about the draft resolution yet. I just had one minor clarification, but certainly let's, if the board wants to discuss the substantive aspects of the proposal first.
Okay. Comments from the board?
I have a few, but I'd like to first start with a question for Valerie and maybe Christy. When it comes to this is a subdivision, and they're presenting a planting plan, and then there's another planting plan that's with the ARB. So like for this subdivision, so my problem is that I really disagree with some of their I think when they're proposing trees like sugar maples along a road that's going to have a lot of salt, it's going to potentially create a lot of hardship for whoever buys this house, because that tree is going to struggle. And and then I have a lot of issues like that. So at this point though, could the landscaping be used as like an illustrative purpose of where the screening is going to be and the amount of trees that are going to go in? I mean, can it be like that? And then the details could be hammered out during the ARB?
I think that's usually the intent of the subdivision approvals, is just to, and then especially for, in this particular case, they're going to need to seek ARB approval. So that's where you would really dive into the details.
So if I'm understanding you, then if we say that this is okay, but then it comes back from the ARB, we're not going to be held to
the actual landscaping notes themselves, or the actual landscaping
the actual
plans.
Species, yeah, the plan.
Right. So I think originally the applicant did not have a very detailed landscaping plan, and the board wanted to see a detailed landscaping plan. So if you want to, you can technically roll back the landscaping plan and maybe have them just identify landscape area and just identify the areas that they intend to landscape, and then you can deal with the details once they become before the ARB.
Right. So I think part of the issue is that they're removing trees. So they're if I'm reading it correctly, they had 290 inches of existing trees. They're going to replace. They're required to replace 145. They're replacing 122. So I think, I mean, I don't want to assume, trying to guess what's going on here, but it seems to me like the trees are this specific amount of trees are being proposed so that they can meet a major portion of this tree requirement. So so they do need to fulfill that, that requirement, I believe, for the subdivision review, correct?
So Donna, you're just to make sure I'm clear, your concern is with the species of trees they're proposing? Yes. Okay, so I mean,
not in the wetland area, but around the house, like they just have trees that are, the future, whoever's buying that house is going to be saddled with issues because.
So it's not the location and.
No, the locations are great. So
okay, so why don't we, I mean, if the board was so inclined, and unless Dan and Valerie feel differently, we could just add a condition to the resolution saying with the species of trees to be finally determined at the time by the ARB period.
That'd be one way to handle this, that would, rather than just keep going back and forth on this, but I defer to my teammates.
Well, because the way I see it, the reality is these plantings aren't going to go in until each house comes in and gets ARB approval and is developed, right? So the timing seems to make sense. And it allows the applicant to move forward because, you know, as we've discussed before, they did previously have approval. This is a reapproval because of the expiration. So it allows them to continue going on their way to getting this recorded and filed so that they can get to the point of getting to ARB approval.
I mean, we just actually just went through this on the prior application. That subdivision, I think, was approved like 4 years ago. So it was approved, somebody came in for the lot, and the board really got another bite of the apple as that lot came before you with the actual house as an ARB application. Because depending, you know, the footprint of the house could change slightly. There could be a lot of factors that impact how the lot would be landscaped.
Right. So
If it's,
everyone
if it's
else is
all
okay-
pertinent information, I mean, better to get it now than later.
You mean do you mean to hammer
If
it out
there's-
now?
Yeah, if there's commentary that you know, is detrimental to the project down the road, I mean, I'm sure the applicant would appreciate hearing it sooner rather than later. It saves everybody a lot of time.
But I have said it, and it keeps coming back with these sugar maples, and now the sweet gum, which is that's the tree that has those big spike balls that come down, which it's a great tree, but next to a driveway, I just, you know, it's I mean, I'm not really sure. So anyway, I'll go whichever way everyone else wants to go, but I just feel like it either has to get hammered out now, which is, there seems to be a difficulty in that, or it can come back with the ARB and get hammered out then.
Do we have, as I guess this is addressed to you, Donna, would you have any specific recommendations for changing those two? You may have even mentioned it at the last meeting.
You know, it's
If you do have, we could make that, you know, we could at least say as a condition of approval that there can't be the sugar maple and the
well,
one.
no, I think it's condition of approval. It needs to be salt tolerant, because it's the town of Austining that puts an abundant amount of salt down on with like throwers. It throws all the way into the yard. So, and we have safe roads. It's a good thing. But so it has to be the right plant for the right place. It has to be salt tolerant along the road and appropriate for along, you know, like along driveways. And that's what has to happen. They did change the evergreens, you know, which I think that's a good change. So it's mainly these ones along the road and along the driveways. And they have, you know, monoculture of the oak trees on the side, but you know, you should never have monocultures anymore. But I would be satisfied with just having trees that are not going to fail, you know. So when those homeowners go in, and that's a lot of trees there, and they're going to be big trees, and that's really expensive to have to deal with.
So the note should say that those trees should be salt tolerant species, and the two that are shown currently are not salt tolerant. So just to let them know, in case their landscape designer is not aware of that.
So are we having the applicant? I'm confused. I thought we were going to have that to be determined at the ARB level. So instead, we're having them deal with it now.
Well, Jim's thought was, if we have some specific, you know, requirements, that if we can let them know now, that saves them a round of mistakes. Which I think,
right. So are we asking them to update the landscaping plan just to note, but then to remove all trees? Or are we asking them to update the landscaping plan with salt tolerant species?
I guess with salt tolerant species.
So then my next question is, Donna, will you be comfortable with any salt tolerant species that they select?
But I think we should leave it open for further refinement at the ARB level anyway.
Okay. So then how, I'm just trying to figure out how we're going to deal with the record, right? So is the landscaping plan going to be updated, but still have the sweet gum there and then say, but will be replaced with salt tolerant species? Or are we just going to remove and just have generic trees, right? You know, the generic tree symbol.
Disclosure, I don't know about the sweet gum salt tolerance. I don't know about that. I just know that this sugar maple it's a tree that's failing in Westchester for the past 2 decades and doesn't tolerate any of these situations. So the sweet gum has other issues, like why you wouldn't want it by the driveway. But they're so, you know, I mean, I feel like it should be done at the ARB and just have this as a placement and a quantity thing on the at this point. But I do respect Jim's point. So you know, I would be satisfied with. I think it's going to take it's going to have to go back and forth again, like to get these tree species hammered out. So it would be, seems like be easier just to put it. Of course, we are just, you know, moving the discussion to a later date. So
partial direction by saying that it can't be a salt intolerant species of tree.
Yeah, it should be, and it should be appropriate for the, you know, the right plant, right place, which I'm sure the landscape architect knows that mantra, because that's every.
But I think we have to be more specific. We have to be more specific than that, I think, because otherwise they would have done it. They wouldn't have put the sugar maple there to begin with.
If I may, I spoke with the landscape architect about this. They felt, I'll bring up the salt tolerant issue with them, but it should be noted that except for maybe the trees in the immediate vicinity of the road, you know, they're on the trees are being planted on the other side of curbing. So it's not like salt is going to be directly put, you know, at their root base. And then as far as the location, they felt that the trees selected were appropriate for the locations shown on the plan. I know, Donna, you disagree with that, but that is what I was told.
Yeah, I don't know. So I think I asked Kathy this once, so I guess if Christy could just confirm this. So the person buys the house and these trees fail, then they can put something else. They're not going to be beholden to this because it's on this site plan that they have to put back those trees, right? I mean, that's no one's going to hold them to that, right?
Right. I think the bigger concept is the screening, and the intent is to have trees that will last, obviously, as you're explaining. So if something is not working in that location because of conditions known or unknown at the time, certainly I don't think it would be unreasonable to expect that someone would replace it with something that's more viable.
Right. Okay. So I don't know how anybody else feels. I mean, I guess at this point, if they change the ones that are close to the road, I still feel that they're not going to be so successful, those trees, but you know, so I defer to everyone else. I do have other issues, so I don't know if you want to, if I can go through those.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, we'll decide on this issue last, I guess. Then we'll come.
So again, it's probably for Valerie again. When Sandy sent the old resolution for us to look at, she also sent the wetland permit and the tree permit. So there's issues on there. So I'm not sure if we were supposed to be looking at those, but they do bring up that there's supposed to be a landscape maintenance agreement that the town that is entered into with the town, and then a 5-year wetland and wetland buffer monitoring and maintenance plan. That was what was previously
right.
approved.
So if you look at the resolution specifically identifies having to refers back to those different permits. And that's going to be required. If you actually look at the permits, there's certain requirements prior to the signing of the subdivision plat, and there were certain requirements prior to issuance of the building permit. And so I refer to the wetlands permit under each one of those.
Okay, so who you compose that? I mean, who puts that together, that maintenance agreement?
We work with Steve Coleman, the
Oh.
consultant. And that's, I mean, this wouldn't be the first time that the town has required this or entered into this. We could certainly circulate it for input, but there's a document, a pretty standard template, and then the applicant inserts information and schedules that are specific to their project and how they're going to be handling the stormwater and mitigation.
Okay, yeah, they used one for the project behind me, so I know that the town, I think that was the first time the town did enter into that kind of agreement, but I did have some issues with it, so I don't know if we can discuss that, because they're saying at one point that they're supposed to water weekly, and it's like, it should be as needed, you know, weekly as needed.
So you're talking about language that's in those agreements?
Those agreements, those
Yeah,
Those prior approvals.
What's that?
They're prior approvals.
Right.
So they're not for the wetlands, they're not here for wetlands permit or those prior approvals. They're only here for subdivision approvals.
Okay, so now the other thing is on there that they did say that they're going to remove all the invasive species, and I did bring that up at the last meeting, and so thank you for putting the deer fencing detail in. That was good. But they didn't mark on the site plan that the invasive plants, that it was agreed that the invasive plants should be removed. And that
I'm sorry, I kind of missed that. What was the distinction that
you're gonna remove the invasive plants from that wetland mitigation area, which you call something different. You call it the buffer enhancement area.
Right. Sorry.
There is like a little tiny note, but it just doesn't seem very obvious. So it's like in language there.
So I guess my question is, how would you like us to address it? So there is a note on the plan saying that invasives will be removed. Right. Are you asking for that to be more prominent, or?
I think so. I think it's going to get lost. I mean, I really do. So I just think it needs to be just like you did with the deer fencing, where you have it. It's like pretty bold and pretty obvious that you just did that. I think it needs to be on there like that. So, and I would say that detail of the deer fencing that you gave is, I think that is like probably a standard deer fencing that they would use on a large area. If you were like to enclose the entire area, you don't, it seems like with that kick bar, which is definitely a tripping hazard, like you don't need any of that for these little enclosures. So I don't know why you would want that. All right, so all right, so Valerie, on your resolution, may I just address something on the resolution?
Yep.
I wrote it down here. I don't have your resolution right in front of me, so I wrote it down. So I hope I wrote it down correctly. 3B, I wrote that I think that the landscaping should be inspected by an expert determined by the town at the expense of the applicant. Is that something similar to what you had, or did I misread it?
I'm looking 3B. I just have the landscaping notes shall be revised as follows. And it says the existing vegetative screening on site shall be maintained, and if existing screening is damaged or dies, that's the typical language that we put in about the first, second, and third year of installation. And you want to add
no, don't you have something about inspecting it? Like how does that get inspected, that it's being taken care of? You know, who's
that's part of the landscape agreement.
Yeah.
Okay.
They put up a
well, the landscape agreement makes the applicant check it, which I definitely disagree with that. I don't think the applicant should be checking their, so you know, that's all that you're saying, we're not reviewing that. So I mean, going forward, that it should.
Well, it's somewhat of a process of self-certification, because these are they have to certify to the town that they've inspected it, and you know that it's required to last for a certain amount of time.
Right, but what I'm saying is I think that it should be someone other than the applicant inspecting their own plan. But if we're not looking at that, then that's mute. So the other issue on the which I guess is the same answer, Valerie, you would have, that's already being addressed, but there was no specifics about the tree replacement money in the resolution. So is that just handled by the tree permit?
So that is, yeah, so that I actually had a question on, because that was one of the things that I don't know if that money has already been exchanged or if it has not. And I just had, we just had, and this was from the prior resolution, like the applicant must provide to the satisfaction of the building department that the final plat meets the section requirements of section 183-12G of the tree protection. So at this point, that was brought over from the prior resolution. If the board wants something amended or changed, then that we go back to this landscaping issue again in terms of, you know, what are they, then they would really have to demonstrate to us that they are actually proposing enough landscaping to meet those requirements.
Well, they have on there that they had on their tree, existing trees, they had that documented the DBH and then what they're planning.
Right. But I think we're potentially opening it up again for potential readjustments. So I think, you know, I'm open to suggestions on that or how to deal with that. Now, this is also, I mean, this is before the final plat. So as long as, I mean, if the board is comfortable with what has been submitted and you feel that that meets the, you know, the intent of the code, then we can move forward with that landscaping plan as is. And then ultimately, when the applicant comes back for ARB and we dive into a little bit more detail, they'll have to just basically, you know, prove to the board that what they're proposing in the individual species will suffice for the tree wall.
It'd be great if we didn't delay the project, you know, since it's kind of a resubmission. But, you know, I thought it would be valuable information for the applicant to know that, you know, there are concerns or issues down the road, and if they have any plans to change it, they can, you know, put it on their list of things to do. That's it.
Chrissy, do you have any thoughts on this issue?
I just pulled up the code. I was trying to see what it says in terms of timing. Yeah, the code doesn't specifically say at what point in time this needs to be fleshed out. Obviously, I think what we're seeing is that there could be changes that are made to the landscaping as we go through this process, although I don't think the intent is to modify the amount of trees or their size. It's more just the types of trees. So whether it's in the resolution or not, it's still a requirement of the code that the applicant has to replace at least 50% of the total aggregate diameter of trees that are removed. So that doesn't go away. So I think.
Well, let me ask you this question,
can explore,
Tom.
Sorry.
I was going to say, Tom, in the subdivision, do you need to do any tree clearing prior to coming back for ARB approval?
I mean, nothing beyond what's actually shown on the plans.
What I mean is,
I guess no. I mean, there isn't. There would be no trees that would be removed prior to getting the ARB approval.
So why don't we change that condition of resolution to have the same condition for the potential tree species, to say when the applicant appears before the planning board for ARB, they must meet any requirements for tree removal as well as, you know, provide a landscaping plan.
I think the way in which that gets a little bit more complicated is whether we're looking at this provision in the context of the subdivision as a whole or on a
Right.
site
Yeah.
basis, because you could have one property, you know, that, and I'm just saying hypothetically, that has 50 trees, right? But you have another property that's already completely clear. I don't know if that's specifically the case here. I'm just saying, I don't know if it's necessarily going to work out as a net per lot as opposed to the subdivision overall. So I think because it's a subdivision, we should look at it in a cohesive, collective way. And so I think to that extent, we kind of have to work off of what the applicant is proposing currently. And then if there are substantive changes that affect these calculations that are made at the ARB level, then we can address that as part of the ARB approval.
That makes sense to me. Mallory, are you good with that? Yeah, okay. Comments from the board on that approach?
I'm okay with it.
You're okay with it? Jim? Yeah. Carolyn?
Yeah.
And Tom, how does that sound to you?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay.
So let's just go through this again. We're amending we're amending the resolution to
a couple of different
so
ways.
it won't be prior to the final site plan plat being signed, correct? Christy?
Sorry, which one are we looking at?
So 3A is really where it refers to the tree code or the tree protection chapter as specific conditions prior to the planning board signing the plat. So we probably should move that to a different location, correct?
I mean, maybe the first C of O for one of the lots. Yeah, I don't know if it needs to be a condition before the plat is signed, but certainly before there's any sort of occupancy of the subdivision. And you know, we may have to craft some language, like I said, where it's something that'll have to be looked at continuously or just at least referred back to as they start coming in for ARB on these lots.
Right.
And I don't know if they'll be doing one at a time or a few, it's all up to the applicant when they get to that point.
Right. Well, there is if you look at number 9, it says prior to the issuance of the building permits for lots 1 and 2, I can add it in there that, confirmation that the tree, that all, regulations are met for the tree protection.
That's fine.
Chapter. Okay.
And then we had 2 areas where we wanted note change. One would be on the invasive species note. That's going to be boldened somehow so it stands out, right? Tom, you said it was there, but Donna thought it was hard to find.
Yeah, I'll tell them to find a way to make it more prominent.
Okay, and then we want to note on there about salt intolerant trees not being appropriate on the driveway and near the main road. Did we decide to do that, or did we decide to leave it general language, appropriate to the area kind of thing?
I think what Valerie's writing is that we're just going to be dealing with the issue when it comes back for the ARB.
Okay,
before
but
the CEO.
Little guidance anyway at this point. Not nail it down, but give them a little guidance so they don't just, put in, something.
Well, Tom, you can relay the information, right?
Yeah, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the landscape plan is generally fine except for the trees along the driveway the sugar maples and the sweet gum along the driveway specifically because of the salt tolerance and other issues, right?
Yeah, your buffer plan is really good in the back, like that back area that's none of those. It's just and you changed up the conifers, so it was just the ones that I feel are going to struggle or fail because they're in the wrong, they're going to be exposed to conditions that they can't grow successfully. So
Right. So it's
right.
it's the primary concern at the moment is the salt tolerance and the sugar maples along the driveway, right? I mean, I know
right,
that
and they should think about the sweet gums by the driveway too.
Right.
They're shallow rooted and they drop those spiky balls.
I
ask you, yeah, what's the issue with the spiky things? Is it a safety hazard, like a slip and fall hazard with the?
It's a mess. So it's a great tree somewhere other than the driveway. But if they want to keep that tree, it is a great tree. It is shallow rooted, so you're going to be putting it through the driveway. So but the main one is the sugar maple. So
I will relay that concern to the landscape architect, and yeah.
Okay, so I think we know how the resolution has to change, and let's see. Do we call for a public hearing on this next time?
This is a public hearing.
It still is a public hearing. Sorry.
So you have to you should just see if there's anyone here from the public who wants to speak on this.
Okay. So with that, are there any members of the public who would like to speak to this application? Hearing none, I think we're good on that score. So we'll keep the public hearing open until next session. And Tom, do you think these changes can be made by April 6th?
You said the deadline for that is the 28th?
The 28th, right.
I think we should be able to meet that deadline, yeah. It seems like the bulk of the changes are to the landscape plan, correct? I don't, Dan and Valerie, do you have any other concerns on the rest of the set?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good with the plan as well.
Okay, then yeah, then I think we should be able to meet that.
Okay, great. So I guess we'll see you next time then.
Okay.
Okay, if there are no further comments from the board or consultants. Seeing none.
Thanks, Tom.
So we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.
Yep, thank you. Have a good night.
Good night. Okay, so we have minutes from February 16th to approve. Have all the members of the board had a chance to read those minutes?
Yes.
And are there any comments or suggested changes?
No.
Hearing none. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes of February 16th into the record?
I make the motion.
Second?
Second.
Jim, how do you vote?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Great. And I think we wanted to go into executive session for a short discussion.
Just to discuss legal procedure.
Okay. And can we, do we, I'm always confused with this. Do we
You
have
do
to,
a motion, yeah.
we have to come back into public session to adjourn, or can we adjourn?
Yeah, so right now you will just go into executive session. I think we could ask the other members of the public to leave. Or if they're near their computer, or Sandy, if you have a way to.
They might not be around.
Yes, I can.
You can bump them. Okay.
All right, so
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, why don't you first entertain a motion to go into executive session, and once the board's done that, Sandy can remove any other people from the meeting.
Okay.
I'll move that we go into executive session to receive advice from counsel.
Great. A second?
I second.
Jim?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
And I say yes as well. So we're going into executive session. And goodbye to the public. Thank you for coming. Sandy, you can knock them off. I think they're probably not at their computers. Very good. And one more.
Oh, that's Margaret.
Oh, that's Margaret. Hi, Margaret. Okay. And
I'll stop.
Just to start recording again.
Very good. So we are now.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Jim?
Second.
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. And thank you all very much. And anyone who is interested in getting together, I guess we have to be a little careful about not having more than 2 of us, but getting together with Glenn Vitromile to look at that 3D model, let me know. Or we could do
I
it.
think he was planning to present it at the next meeting too, so.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely want to see it ahead of time. If anyone else does, he said that would be possible.
Does that require any kind of specific software to run the model?
It depends on how it's written. Usually you build these models in a software that is a special thing, but then you can save it in a way that can be viewed on any number of viewers. I think it's KMZ files you view just in Google. So you can usually.
Yeah, I wouldn't think they did anything like that. I think it'll just be like a straight up, video movie file that can be watched on any type of, the standard stuff that comes with your computer.
That's what I was hoping you were going to say. Have them send it out.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
it sounds like it might be on a website. You could just view
He
it
can
again.
probably make it available. I think he just wants to be able to get the narrative when people are seeing it.
He wants to have a big splash, I guess.
I mean, these models are great for making a good splash, but what I'm interested in is having the public be able to see the thing from all the angles and see what the the big retaining walls look like, see how their houses next to a retaining wall, stuff like that. So we'll see what he's got. I hope it's adequate. I mean, in my mind, the best kind of a 3D model is you get the model, and then you can direct it. You can spin it around and look at it from any angle you want. You don't have to just watch it like a movie. But we'll see what he has, and we'll go from there. Sound all right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, great. Thank you all so much.
All right.
Have a good
Bye.
night.
Have a good night.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.